Tonight, a global outpouring of grief and reflection over the passing of Pope Francis. The cause of death, how the pontiff is being remembered.
Impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle for Italy.
And what will be unique about Francis's funeral? His Canadian influence.
When I said, feel my hurt, feel our pain, and he nodded.
My conversation with the man who led a historic delegation of residential school survivors to the Vatican. And the likely shortlist of successors the conclave will choose from.
You have no control over who asks questions, right? No ability.
Anybody can ask questions.
Just ask your question.
Well, can I ask my question?
Plus, what triggered this confrontation with seniors on the campaign trail? And noticing new neighborly tension.
The Canadians were always there, and now the Canadians are like, we hate you.
Why an American comedian's punchlines aren't landing with Canadians.
They're furious.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. Cardinals and other mourners from around the globe are on their way to Vatican City tonight to mark the end of one chapter for the world's 1.4 billion Catholics and begin a new one. The Vatican revealing today that Pope Francis died on this Easter Monday at the age of 88 of stroke and heart failure after a battle with double pneumonia that required a 38-day hospital stay. In his 12-year papacy, Francis reformed the Church with humility and compassion, championed the causes of the poor and marginalized, and even in his final hours, when his voice was weak, he spoke with strength, courage, and conviction. CTV's Heather Butts leads us off tonight on his life and legacy.
The faithful joining tonight in prayer in St. Peter's Square. These, the first sounds letting the world know of the death of Pope Francis, the end of a monumental era for the Catholic Church, a pontiff who charmed the world with his humble style and devotion to the less fortunate.
He was an example of loving everyone, no matter who you were.
The announcement from Vatican officials.
Il Vescovo di Roma Francesco è tornato alla casa del Padre.
The Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. The statement just hours after a surprise appearance in what would be his final Easter blessing yesterday, where he appealed for a ceasefire to end what he called a dramatic and deplorable humanitarian situation in Gaza, a worrisome climate of anti-Semitism, and urging the release of all remaining hostages. The time of his passing on Easter Monday not lost on the faithful.
Impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle for Italy, but it's sad.
From the moment he stepped forward as Pope, Francis made it known his would be a different papacy.
Buonasera.
The first Jesuit from Argentina, the first from the Americas, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the son of Italian immigrants. He modeled a life of simplicity. He refused to live in the grand papal apartment and wore silver, not gold. Elected at the age of 76, still he was progressive, allowing divorced Catholics to take part in the communion service.
Chi sono io per giudicare?
The pontiff eased the hard stance the church previously held on same-sex couples, asking early on, who am I to judge? Contraception, he maintained, shouldn't be used to prevent pregnancy, but was acceptable to prevent disease. He praised women and promoted a record number to leadership positions, but stopped short of allowing them to be priests. On abortion, he compared it to hiring a hitman.
Per risolvere un problema.
He was in part defined by humility. Francis comforted the vulnerable and championed the plight of the poor. He condemned world conflicts, urging peace in Ukraine, denouncing President Trump's deportation policies. He pushed for better treatment of migrants and warned of suffering because of climate change. Under his watch, the church confronted the clergy's sex abuse scandals. In a letter to all Catholics, he wrote, "We showed no care for the little ones. We abandoned them," ordering a first-ever Roman Catholic summit on pedophilia and introducing new reforms, though critics say he didn't go far enough to address the systemic failures. To generations of Indigenous Canadians, he apologized.
Nel chiedervi scusa.
For the abuses they suffered in Canada's Catholic-run residential schools, repeating it again during an historic week-long visit to Canada. Even in his final hours at Sunday's Easter Mass, he remained a beacon of hope, reminding the world to revive our trust in others, including those who are different than ourselves. Heather Butts, CTV News.
Leaders around the world are reflecting on the Pope's passing. King Charles saying he, along with the Queen, are most saddened by the loss and reflecting on a meeting with the Pope earlier this month. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying he knew how to give hope, ease suffering through prayer, and foster unity. Former U.S. President Joe Biden referring to Francis as the people's Pope and, unlike any who came before him, one of the most consequential leaders of our time.
He was a good man, worked hard. He loved the world.
And U.S. President Donald Trump signing an executive order that all flags be flown at half-mast and saying he will attend the funeral with his wife Melania, likely later this week. The papal conclave to select a successor is steeped in centuries-old tradition and held 15 to 20 days after the Pope's death. 135 cardinals under the age of 80 will be part of that secretive process. 108 selected by Francis himself, closed off from the rest of the world inside the Sistine Chapel until a two-thirds majority chooses the next leader. Black smoke indicating no decision. White smoke communicating to the world there is one. On the likely shortlist, names that span the world, including Canada, ones that share Francis's global outlook, and others that have a more conservative vision.
Really face two choices in this election. Do they want to continue on the path of reform that Francis initiated, of opening the church up to the modern world, or do they want a course correction to elect a pope that's perhaps more focused on doctrine and discipline?
Here in Canada, nearly 11 million people identify as Catholic, many of them reflecting on the Pope's life today. Also reflecting residential school survivors who are remembering being able to share their pain directly with the pontiff. CTV's Adrian Gobriel spoke with some of them.
An Easter Monday Mass for the morning. Parishioners line the pews of Catholic cathedrals across Canada to remember the people's Pope.
Probably the first time I ever had a few tears in my eyes when a Pope died.
Pope Francis's passing surprising even archbishops who, like many, witnessed him take part in the Vatican's Easter Sunday proceedings.
We knew that the Pope had made an appearance yesterday. It sounded like he was on the mend.
The faithful now left to remember a Pope whose compassionate voice was heard around the world.
He wore his heart on his sleeve, and you could just tell that his heart bled for anybody that was suffering or in need.
In 2022, a delegation from Canada visited Pope Francis at the Vatican.
Just looking at the pictures that
Residential school survivor Linda Daniels was part of that delegation.
when I shook his hand and I looked into his eyes, when I said, "Feel my hurt, feel our pain," and he nodded.
Following that meeting, Pope Francis made the pilgrimage to Canada, where he issued an emotional apology for the role the Catholic Church played in the Indigenous residential school system.
To show his regret, to make amends for the evil of the Catholic Church's role in residential schools was incredibly impactful.
Though for some Indigenous leaders, today is a day of mixed emotions.
I'm still waiting, as many of us are, for the return of artifacts that are sitting in Rome.
And still today, many Indigenous peoples also took the time to reflect and give thanks.
Thank you, Your Holiness, Pope Francis, for coming and meeting the survivors. Miigwech.
The Assembly of First Nations also releasing a brief statement today, in part saying that Pope Francis opened up a new chapter of healing. He listened to us and he heard us. Omar.
Such an emotional and powerful journey, Adrian. Thank you. Let's bring in the man who led that historic delegation to the Vatican in 2022, Phil Fontaine. Mr. Fontaine, thank you so much for being here today. I imagine there's so much going through your mind today. Take me back to that meeting with His Holiness, an audience that I understand was scheduled for an hour but lasted a lot longer. What do you think made the Holy Father stay?
I believe that the Holy Father wanted to hear from every one of the survivor delegates that were in a room with him, and there were 15 of us, and it was quite obvious that we were going to be running out of time. So he signaled to one of his officials that we were to continue with the presentations, and that was quite a moment for me. You have to keep in mind that I'm a res guy. I come from Sagi, and here I'm in a room speaking directly to the Holy Father, the most powerful voice in the Catholic Church. I was just about overwhelmed, let me tell you.
It sounds like an incredible moment. There are many steps on the journey of reconciliation, including the return of Indigenous artifacts from the Vatican. Has there been any progress on that, and who continues that work?
Well, the discussion has been going on for a good number of years, and there are three parties that are involved in the discussions about the repatriation of artifacts: the Inuit, the Métis, and the Assembly of First Nations. And the Holy Father appointed a very senior Vatican official to lead the discussions from the side of the Vatican. And I've been involved in the discussions with the Assembly of First Nations, and we're getting close. The Vatican has made it very clear that they're committed to the return of sacred objects, cultural items of great significance to us, manuscripts, pictures of residential school students. And I want to be around when we have the opportunity to look at, for example, at manuscripts and the photographs. Because I'd probably be able to identify a lot of the people that are in these photos.
A day many are waiting for. Mr. Fontaine, appreciate your time this evening. Thank you. On the campaign trail, party leaders also took a moment to pay tribute.
Pope Francis was a voice of moral clarity, spiritual courage, and boundless compassion. He was, in many respects, the world's conscience, never hesitating to challenge the powerful on behalf of the vulnerable.
It's a significant loss for the Catholic community, and I want to share my condolences on behalf of all New Democrats.
There have been countless millions of Catholics and non-Catholics that have been inspired by his leadership in faith and other domains, and our prayers are with all Catholics as they lay to rest the head of the Catholic Church.
With exactly 1 week to go until Election Day, the Conservatives said they will release their costed platform tomorrow. But today the party said they have a plan for Canadian homebuyers.
I'm announcing today a plan to build 2.3 million new homes over the next 5 years for a change.
Pierre Poilievre also made his pitch to a group of seniors in Toronto today, but as CTV's Abigail Beeman reports, for some, it was a tough sell.
Well, I have a very quick question.
Pierre Poilievre was center stage at a town hall by the Canadian Association of Retired Persons in Toronto, where some seniors were mad they weren't being heard.
When would I be able to ask a question?
That question was eventually answered. Others were not. But this is the demographic Poilievre needs to fight hardest to win. While Conservatives are leading among voters aged 35 to 54, the latest Nanos polling gives the Liberals a huge advantage among older voters, nearly 20 points. And the party knows it.
Are we really going to give these clowns a fourth term? I'm voting Conservative.
Launching this ad featuring golfing boomers and stressing previously announced plans at the seniors targeted town hall.
Let me say clearly and unequivocally, Conservatives will preserve the age of retirement for CPP, OAS, and GIS at age 65.
Mixed reviews from the crowd, who were invited by CARP, not the party.
I'm putting my hopes and trust in Poilievre because I believe that the points he makes are compelling.
He should have instead
push the positive side of his campaign, what he plans to do. And to heck with talking more about what the other guy did. That's in the past. What are you doing now in the future?
Professor Nelson Wiseman says the Conservatives' challenge is older seniors tend to be small C Conservatives, but not always big C.
And you look at the style of Carney, who appears more adult, and Poilievre, who comes across as a bulldog. That doesn't fit well, generally, with older people's image of proper behavior.
Tomorrow, the Conservatives release their platform, the last of the parties to do so, and after the advance polls closed. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Toronto.
I'm Mike Lecouteur in Fredericton, where Liberal leader Mark Carney is wrapping up a tour of maritime provinces in an effort to shore up support here. In Charlottetown, Carney announced his government will drop tolls on the Confederation Bridge from $50 to $20, and he promoted his 4-year, $5.4 billion plan for health care. Carney then went to Nova Scotia, where the party is hoping to score more seats. He played road hockey with some kids in a riding that has historically been Conservative, but the Liberals are hoping for a power play there. And at the rally this evening, it saw hundreds of supporters where he continued the theme while asking people to give the Liberals a strong mandate.
There are 5 minutes left in the third period of Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It is time to leave everything on the ice. And that means, and I know many of you have given so much, but that means that we need you to knock on even more doors. We need you to make even more phone calls. We need you to talk again to your friends, your family, your neighbors. And above all, we need you to vote Liberal.
Carney now heads to Quebec, where the party believes it can take seats away from the Bloc Québécois. Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Fredericton.
I'm Rachel Aiello in Burnaby, British Columbia. Today, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh leveraged the Liberals leaving expanding pharmacare out of their platform to make his case for undecided Canadians to vote with their values.
So, if you're out there and you're tuning in right now and you're wondering, what do I do in this election? I'm worried about Pierre Poilievre and those cuts. I'm worried about Mark Carney and the cuts that he's proposing. What do I do? Well, I'll tell you this. Re-elect your New Democrat MP. Vote for a New Democrat.
Beyond a small post-debate bump, the NDP have struggled to gain traction. And now campaigners on battleground Vancouver Island, where Singh spent most of his day, are telling voters who might rather the Liberals win to cast their ballots strategically for the NDP to stop the Conservatives from picking up seats. Of note, at this stage in the race, tonight, Singh circled back to his own at-risk riding for the second time this week. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Burnaby, BC.
And CTV National News will be live from Victoria in battleground British Columbia on Wednesday night as we enter the final stretch of the campaign. Coming up, what's behind the latest market nosedive? Plus, the comedian making waves for comments about Canada. The U.S. dollar on the markets took another tumble today after Donald Trump again ramped up attacks on the chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve. The Dow plunged more than 970 points, and the U.S. dollar slid to its lowest level since 2022 after Trump on social media called Jerome Powell a, quote, major loser for warning about the negative impact of tariffs. U.S. Secretary of State Pete Hegseth lashed out at the media this morning, defending himself against reports he shared sensitive information for a second time in a Signal chat.
This is where we're fighting hoaxsters. This group, this group right here, full of hoaxsters that peddle anonymous sources from leakers with axes to grind.
Reports say Hegseth shared details of the March attack on Yemen's Houthis in a group chat that included his wife, brother, and personal lawyer. Trump is defending Hegseth, saying he's doing a great job. American comedian Jim Gaffigan says Canadian audiences have changed amid political tensions with the U.S.
My joke was like, I would bring that up, that the Canadians were always there. And now the Canadians are like,
we hate you.
On a recent comedy podcast, Gaffigan says he used to count on Canadians laughing at his jokes about the U.S. government. But now, he notes, Canadians are angry over any joke about Donald Trump or U.S. government policy. Still ahead, what caused passengers to evacuate this flight? A member of the family who owns the first TV station in Newfoundland and Labrador was killed in Newport Beach, California. Jeffrey Sterling, the son of Newfoundland Broadcasting Company CEO Scott Sterling, was shot and killed by local officers last week. Police confirmed Jeffrey, riding a motorcycle, was stopped for a traffic violation, became uncooperative, grabbed the officer's taser, and assaulted him before being shot by police. Passengers were forced to evacuate after Delta Airlines plane caught fire right before takeoff in Orlando. Flames and heavy smoke could be seen coming from the right engine, while passengers escaped from the plane heading to Atlanta with nearly 300 people on board. Fortunately, there were no injuries. Still ahead, what the boy in this video, now a teen, is saying about this heartfelt moment with the Pope. We are ending this broadcast tonight with a memorable moment that showed just how Pope Francis lived his faith, with an extraordinary ability to connect with those around him. The video you're about to see is from 2018 in Rome.
Vieni da me e dimmi all'orecchio. Dimmi all'orecchio.
That's Emmanuel Balderi, who wanted to ask if his late dad, an atheist, was in heaven. But he was too scared. Here's how the pontiff consoled the 8-year-old.
E lui ha il dubbio che il papà, per non essere credente, non potesse andare in cielo. Chi dice che va in cielo è Dio. Ma com'è il cuore di Dio davanti a un papà così? Com'è? Cosa vi sembra a voi? Un cuore di papà.
The now 16-year-old says that moment is one he will remember forever.
Oggi, dopo, domani e comunque nel futuro, certo Papa Francesco è stato e sarà nelle mie preghiere.
A beautiful moment to cherish. And that's a snapshot of this Monday. Todd Vanderhayden will be here tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching and good night.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast. Now more than ever, Canadians need to know where our leaders stand. CTV News keeps you informed on the issues that hit home. This election, connect to Canada's most trusted news source, CTV News, now more than ever.